Hi everybody, we're here today to talk about Hypertufa, making Hypertufa. So I have in the pot here this basic mix. It's one of the basic mixes. I'm making a pot that will be outside and will be frost proof, so it's a little bit different to the ones that you would make for indoors. The basic mix is 2 measures of peat moss, normal compost, doesn't matter what kind of compost it is, out of a bag. 1 measure of cement, either white or grey cement. White cement just gives a different colour, really, a less kind of limestone colour. And 1 measure of perlite. But to this mix I've added half a measure of perlite and half a measure of grey sand, as you can see there, regular builder sand. And adding sand and a little bit more cement, that's probably about a measure of cement. I've added a little bit more, maybe a quarter extra, because that makes it a little bit stronger for outside, and the added addition of sand makes it tougher and more likely to be frost resistant. Although I have made them without sand and left them outside, and as long as they're not really huge pots, if they're kind of small, like reasonably small little pots, then like this one for instance, it's quite a small pot as you can see, and I left it outside all last winter. You can see by the fact that it's gone a little bit green with algae, and it's absolutely fine. Now, it was difficult getting it out of the mould. It had a broken leg. I'm going to show you how to fix that leg later on. But for the moment, we'll just carry on with this. So, and just mix that really well. This basin could have been a bit bigger. I could have used a bigger basin, but anyway, it'll be fine. Unless I can quickly find one. That's a bit better. When you're working with cement powder, you should always wear a mask because the dust is very fine, and preferably use it outside where there's better ventilation and it doesn't end up on furniture and everywhere because it's very fine dust. And when it's wet, of course, use gloves if you're not used to working with it, because it can be very drying on your hands. Now, because I used white cement, this will be paler than if I'd used grey cement. Grey cement tends more to have, the Hypertufa comes out looking more like limestone, like this kind of colour. And the white tends to come out much paler than that. I don't have anything white here to show you at the moment. If you want to add colour to it, you can buy these concrete colours in any hardware shop. It's $8.50 for a kilo. This is a buff kind of tan kind of colour. And there's a dark reddish brown. It's very dark brown actually. And this one is more like a terracotta kind of reddish colour. If I can get it open. It's a very tight lid on it to make sure it's child-proof. This makes, if you use a good bit of it, it ends up really dark terracotta, as you can see. But if you use only a little bit, especially with the white cement, it ends up quite pink, which is nice. So I'm just going to use a little bit of the tan in here, say maybe 1 spoonful. Give that a mix. There are other ways you can colour. If you decide, if you just make them plain without the colour, or if you add the colour and then after it's made you decide, oh, I would have liked it a bit darker or a bit stronger or whatever, you can colour them with the raw pigments afterwards, just like you would paint. Just add it to water and wash it on, and after it cures after a couple of weeks, then the colour is sealed in. Or you can, even when they're completely dry, you can use acrylic paint watered down so it soaks into the cement so it doesn't look like paint sitting on the surface. You can use that option either. Now, it's usually about kind of 1/2 to 1 proportion of the measure by water. But it's better to add a little bit less rather than too much at the beginning, because you don't want it to be too wet. Because if it's too wet, then when it goes in the mould, it'll just slide down the mould overnight, as I found out when I was first making them. Okay. So what you're looking for is when you take a handful of it and you squeeze it tightly, if it holds together like that, when you jump around your hands, if it's like fairly, see the way it's kind of holding together but it's still kind of breaks apart if you just push it lightly, that's kind of perfect really. Could be a little bit wetter if you want, but not much. Just a tiny bit maybe wetter like that. Okay, perfect. So I have 3 molds I'm going to use today. It's a very simple little plastic bowl from the pound shop. And that one doesn't have legs in it, won't have legs in it. What comes out is one I made earlier. And later on, either in this video if I have time or in the next video, I'll show you how to add legs to that form that's already made. So, but because that has a flat bottom, it'll be usable without legs anyway. And then I have just an ordinary, regular breakfast cereal or soup bowl. We'll make one in that. And then the other thing I have is this tin kind of shape, which is quite nice because it's quite wide at the top and narrower at the bottom. That's really important, that your mould is narrower at the bottom than it is at the top, so the form comes out of it easily. If you use these kind of shapes where it's the same at the top and the bottom, they're very difficult to get the form out. It kind of creates a kind of a suction when it hardens, and it's really difficult. You more often than not end up breaking the legs off or breaking part of it, which is not a major issue. That's easily repairable, but you know, if you can avoid that, it's always better, really. So, okay, so we have our form, and I have a piece of Kingspan insulation there cut out in that shape in the bottom, as you can see. So the corners of it there, when the cement goes down into the corners, that will create little legs. You can do that at this stage, or you can add legs afterwards. It's a lot easier to do it at this stage, because to get the shape right afterwards can be a bit fiddly, and it's not impossible, but just requires extra work. So push it really well down into the corners, because when you don't do that, it's very easy for them to come out in odd kind of shapes, and then sometimes they're a little bit unstable. So make sure that it's really well compressed down into the corners. Okay, and then a layer on the bottom, and whatever about the sides, the bottom should be a good 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch for this size anyway. Certainly no thinner than that, really. Bits of wood are really handy, round ones and square ones. Just bits of logs. What did I do with my... There it is there. Well, I'm just going to check the depth of it. Make sure it's deep enough. Yeah, I think it's good. It's about kind of maybe half an inch. Could be a little bit thicker, but I think it'll be okay. So I'll do the sides now. Lay it down on the side, actually. It'll be easier. Just kind of press it down with your hand. You can't really see that, but that actually makes it a lot easier. But it's only doable for one side, because as soon as you turn it over, you have to be very careful not to let it collapses, because it's still wet. Let's just see, it might actually work. Yeah, it kind of does. See? You can see how thin it is. It's really quite thin there. If it was a bit thicker now, it would be better. So, I wasn't sure now if this was going to, if I was going to have enough for this or too much, so I think I might just have enough for this one. Oh, maybe. What am I doing for time? 12 minutes. So make sure it's really well compressed, because the more compressed it is, the stronger it will be when it dries out. It's more important that it's compressed rather than thick. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be quite so thick. I have made quite large forms before where it's been quite thin, but as long as it's compressed, it'll be strong. Maybe just make sure the corners have a little bit extra. Okay, so you can leave the edges kind of raw or press them down like that, so you get a more of a sense of the thickness that it is. Let's see, it's a bit thin there, a little bit more. It's a little bit on the thin side just here, so I'll put some more there. can just add more as you go, because as long as you press it firmly, it will stick. Okay. It's not bad. I like the top to be uneven. I don't like it to be completely even, because I think it looks more natural. Okay, so I'll just add a little bit more at the bottom, make it a bit thicker, and just compress it a bit. Now, that'll do, yeah. Make a drainage hole. So that's quite thick now. It's good inch, which is good. And that doesn't have to be perfect, because you can tidy it up afterwards. Okay, so that's basically it. So then you fold in the plastic, make sure it's completely covered in plastic, so none of the moisture can escape, and leave it for a minimum of 3 days. If it's outside like this one is, then it'll be more like 4 days really, unless the weather is very warm. And then we'll come back and check it out. And I made some ones earlier, but my videos are a minimum, they're a maximum of 20 minutes long, and we're at 18 minutes, so I'll come back and make another video about that straight after this one. Okay, so for now, that's enough to be going on with. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.